The story many of us learn in school is a simple one, often presented as a grand adventure. It begins with a brave Italian explorer named Christopher Columbus. He had this bold idea that the world was round, not flat. He believed he could reach the rich lands of Asia by sailing west across the vast Atlantic Ocean. The tale continues with Columbus struggling to find support for his ambitious journey. He was turned away by kings and queens until, finally, the Spanish monarchs, Isabella and Ferdinand, agreed to fund his expedition. This part of the narrative builds a hero, a man against the world, pushing against the ignorance of his time. In this popular version of history, the year 1492 is marked as a moment of monumental discovery. After many weeks at sea, with his crew near mutiny, Columbus and his 3 small ships, the Nina, the Pinta, and the Santa Maria, spotted land. He had, according to the legend, discovered a new world. This land was seen as empty, a wilderness waiting to be tamed and claimed for European civilization and Christianity. The story celebrates Columbus's courage, his perseverance, and his vision. He is painted as the person who single-handedly opened up 2 entire continents to the people of Europe, initiating an age of exploration and progress for all. This heroic tale is often accompanied by images of Columbus planting a Spanish flag on a sandy beach, a powerful symbol of arrival and possession. He is greeted by a few curious but ultimately passive native people who are depicted as simple and primitive. They willingly trade gold and other valuables for cheap glass beads and trinkets. This portrayal reinforces the idea that the encounter was peaceful and that the indigenous inhabitants were in awe of the Europeans and their advanced technology. The story suggests that this was the beginning of a beneficial relationship, with Europeans bringing civilization to a people who lacked it. But this narrative, repeated in textbooks and national celebrations for centuries, is a myth. It is a story told from a single perspective, that of the conquerors. It intentionally leaves out crucial details and ignores the voices and histories of millions of people. The idea that Columbus was a hero who discovered an empty land is a dangerous simplification. It erases the complex societies that already existed and sanitizes the brutal reality of what followed his arrival. To understand what truly happened, we must look past this comforting fable and confront a much more complicated and often painful history. Long before Columbus or any other European ever dreamed of sailing west, the Americas were already home to millions of people. These were not empty continents. They were vibrant, populated lands with a deep and rich history stretching back thousands of years. The first peoples arrived in the Americas more than 15,000 years ago, migrating from Asia across a land bridge that once connected Siberia and Alaska. Over millennia, they spread out across North and South America, from the frozen Arctic to the tip of Patagonia. They adapted to every imaginable environment, creating thousands of unique cultures and societies. These indigenous societies were incredibly diverse, with more than 2,000 different languages spoken across the hemispheres. They were not the simple nomadic tribes often portrayed in the myth. Many had developed sophisticated systems of government, agriculture, and science. In Central America, the Maya built stunning cities with towering pyramids, created complex calendars, and developed an advanced system of writing. The Aztec Empire, with its magnificent capital city of Tenochtitlan, was a marvel of engineering, larger and cleaner than any European city of its time. Its markets bustled with trade, and its society was highly organized. In South America, the Inca Empire constructed a massive network of roads that spanned thousands of miles through the Andes Mountains, connecting a vast and well-governed territory. They were masters of stonework and created intricate systems of terrace farming to cultivate crops on the steep mountain slopes. In North America, numerous cultures thrived. The peoples of the Mississippian culture built enormous earthen mounds, like the great city of Cahokia near modern-day St. Louis, which was home to tens of thousands of people. From the complex agricultural societies of the Southwest to the hunting nations of the Great Plains, the Americas were a tapestry of human ingenuity. The idea that these continents were a new world is only true from a European point of view. For the people who already lived there, it was simply their world, an ancient land filled with history, tradition, and meaning. They had their own stories of creation, their own laws, and their own understanding of the cosmos. To say that America was discovered in 1492 is to dismiss the existence and humanity of all these people. It implies they were not truly there until a European saw them, rendering their long history invisible and irrelevant. The claim that Columbus was the first European to reach the Americas is also factually incorrect. Nearly 500 years before Columbus set sail, another group of seafaring Europeans had already made the journey across the Atlantic. The Vikings, led by the explorer Leif Erikson, sailed from Greenland and established a settlement in what is now Newfoundland, Canada, around the year 1000. Archaeological evidence at L'Anse aux Meadows confirms their presence. While their settlement did not last long, and their knowledge of the new lands did not spread widely throughout Europe, their journey proves that transatlantic voyages were possible long before 1492. The arrival of Columbus, however, marked a pivotal turning point in world history for a different reason. It initiated a permanent and devastating collision of worlds. Unlike the Vikings, the Spanish expedition was followed by waves of European colonization, driven by a desire for wealth, land, and the expansion of empire. This was not a discovery, it was an invasion. The primary goal was not to learn from the native peoples, but to exploit them and their resources. Columbus's own journals detail his immediate interest in finding gold and his assessment of the native Arawak people as potential slaves. The consequences for the indigenous populations were catastrophic. The Europeans brought with them diseases like smallpox, measles, and influenza, to which the native peoples had no immunity. These plagues swept through the continents, wiping out an estimated 90% of the population in some areas. Entire cultures and civilizations were destroyed not just by warfare, but by invisible killers. This demographic collapse was one of the greatest human tragedies in history, a direct result of the contact initiated in 1492. It was a biological holocaust that cleared the way for European settlement on a massive scale. Beyond disease, the Europeans brought violence, slavery, and a systematic effort to destroy native cultures. People were forced from their lands, their religions were suppressed, and their social structures were shattered. The quest for gold and silver led to brutal systems of forced labor in mines and on plantations. The discovery celebrated in the myth was, for the people on the receiving end, the beginning of a long and brutal period of conquest, subjugation, and genocide. The story of progress for Europe was a story of destruction for the Americas. Comparing the myth to the reality reveals a stark and troubling contrast. The myth presents a hero. The reality shows a man who initiated a brutal conquest. The myth speaks of an empty wilderness. The reality is a story of vibrant, ancient civilizations. The myth celebrates a peaceful encounter. The reality is one of violence, disease, and enslavement. The myth frames the event as a discovery. The reality was an invasion that led to the death of millions and the destruction of entire worlds. The simple story of a brave explorer finding a new world is a lie that serves to justify the actions that followed. To continue teaching the myth of Columbus is to perpetuate a history written by the victors, one that silences the voices of the vanquished. It asks us to celebrate the beginning of a process that led to immense suffering and injustice. The word discovery itself is deeply problematic. One cannot discover a place that is already home to millions of people. Using this word centers the European experience as the only one that matters, effectively erasing the humanity and history of indigenous peoples. It presents their existence as secondary, only starting when the Europeans arrived. Why does it matter to know the real story? It matters because history shapes our understanding of the present. The legacy of this invasion is still with us today. The poverty, discrimination, and struggles for sovereignty faced by indigenous communities are a direct result of the historical events that began in 1492. Acknowledging the full painful truth is the first step toward understanding these contemporary issues and seeking justice. It allows us to honor the resilience and survival of indigenous peoples who continue to fight for their cultures and their rights. Ultimately, learning the true history of the Americas is not about assigning blame or feeling guilty. It is about seeking a more complete and honest understanding of our past. It requires us to move beyond simple hero narratives and embrace a more complex story, one that includes the perspectives of all the people involved. By replacing the myth of discovery with the reality of encounter and conquest, we can build a more accurate and just foundation for understanding who we are, how we got here, and the work that still needs to be done to heal the wounds of the past.